seeing those introductions. So I've pressed record, and it gives me great pleasure to support Kin on this webinar today, and I'll hand over to Michael and Erica for today's session. If you've got any questions at any time, please use the chat and I'll interrupt the speakers on your behalf. But thank you everyone, and over to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Nancy. Thanks for the introduction.
Welcome, guys.
I was going to take you through a little bit as well, as we're going to kickstart this all off, so make sure my slides work okay. Kin has been around since 2001, since the Knowledge Innovation Network from Warwick Business School, and as part of that, they've always had a special interest group, especially for communities of practice. And as today's session really is just sharing some of the research that's taken part as part of that network. I want to share some of the things that I've used and learned from over like a period of time as well.
Yeah.
Today, so this is our lovely pictures of ourselves. So I'm one of the new facilitators at Kin, and Erica is our main coordinator of the Knowledge Innovation Network. So that's us. Erica, would you like to tell everyone a little bit about Kin as an introduction for us?
Yeah, okay, so I noticed on the call we've got a couple of Kin members, so hello you, welcome. We've got a couple of former members, alumni, so again, hello, welcome back to Kin. And lots of people who maybe not come across Kin at all. So as Michael said, we've been going since 2001. It's part of Warwick Business School, and within Warwick Business School they have a research area which is called ICON, Innovation, Knowledge and Organisational Networks. And out of ICON, Kin was born. So Kin, the Knowledge and Innovation Network, was really set up to help our academic areas, specifically ICON, connect to the business world and build some really strong relationships with people working out there in the business world who were responsible for innovation, knowledge or organisational networks. In that, we have had various member organisations, which we'll mention to you in a moment, over the last 20 years. It's a small network, it's quite, what's the word, it's quite discreet, it's very open, and one of the things about the network is because we're a small discrete network, people are very keen and willing to share. So both in terms of the knowledge they share with us when we do our research with them, but also the knowledge they share with each other, practitioners of knowledge and innovation across organisations. So we'd welcome you to Kin. It's a very friendly and open network. And we are currently working with a new membership model, which we'll tell you about in a moment, because one of the things that we're realising is that as we're working more in this field of innovation, and any of you who are working in this area will know, it's the more diverse the organisations you can connect with and collaborate with, then the more valuable your innovations. If you only connect with and collaborate with organisations which are like yourselves, then your thinking is likely to be more restrictive. So the research that we're going to share with you over the webinar today draws upon some of these kind of factors, draws upon our knowledge and our best practice, and Mike's going to take you through the general introduction. I'll chip in as and when if I've got some input. As Mike mentioned, he's only recently been working with Kin as one of our facilitators, about a year or so, and I've been with Kin since the start, so kind of 18, 19 years. So it's a long time. So we've got lots of experience between us. Mike and Nancy were former members of Kin, and now they've come on to the inside. So they've moved from being recipients of Kin knowledge to being part of the facilitation team of that knowledge. So as there's a couple of links there, if you want to find out more about the research, you get an overview. And for any Kin members who are on the call today, you'll find links to all of the reports on the event page, so you can download those in full and read them at your leisure. So
that's
over
great.
to you, Mike.
Thanks, Erica. Just as Erica mentioned, there's been a number of members. Very sort of, the idea behind it is very much non-competing. So a lot of organisations have been able to share not only the practice, but also being able to trust each other in that sharing as well. So here's some of the organisations that have been part of it. One's highlighted in orange are the ones that are current members.
Yeah, and I think you'll see we've got a mix here from big corporates to government departments to third sector, and now we're starting to work a lot more with small independents as well, helping to kind of mix up the membership scale and size.
As today's all about communities of practice, there's a whole range of different definitions around communities of practice, but Nancy gave me this one earlier on, just around groups of people sharing concern or passion for something they do, and how to learn about it as well and how to interact regularly. So that was one definition that you could use for that, but there's hundreds of different ones out there. Depending on your organisation, you adapt it to fit your needs. And also another one that Nancy pinged to me earlier on about those communities and conversations actually lead to collaboration as well. Yeah. So that's what a lot of stuff that we've learned over the last sort of, for me, for the last 16 years running communities, that communities and conversations work towards collaboration, and that's what I'm looking for. Next bit, I'm going to get Nancy to pop up a little poll for us, just to find out a little bit about you guys, what your background is as well, so we got a bit of an understanding where we go for this. So hopefully up on your screen, you should have a little poll there about do you support communities of practice, how long have you been working in them, is your community internal or externally focused? So if you've got a few minutes, there should be a poll just up on your screen now, if you can see that, and you can then take a vote for us and we can then see the results.
Yeah, so this is a great way, you know, it's obviously hard to foster relationships when we're on a webinar and not in a room together, but we found things like this poll to really help us see that we're maybe in company with people that share a similar situation to us. So we'll operate this poll and a couple of others during the webinar, and we'll share the results with you, and you get to see who the answers of the other group. So I think I'll give it another few seconds so we can get more votes.
That's good that everyone so far said yes to the support community of practice. That's a good start.
Yes,
they're on the right call.
Right, they're on.
Yeah, a good mixture. We've got some people have been doing this for a long while, quite a lot of newbies as well. So I've got a few newbies here, a few in between.
Yeah, I needed a button that said over 20 years.
Right, I'm sorry Catherine can't see the poll, and apologies to anyone else who's on the phone, but I'm going to end the poll now and we'll read you the results so that you can see the answers. So 100% said yes, they support a community of practice. The majority have been over 5 years, but then second to that there's 26 and 4% that's sort of less than 2 years. Interestingly, this is pretty even mix really. Are your communities internally or externally focused? 35% internal, 26% external, and then 39%. So very close on that one. And then we asked, do you coordinate your activities online? The majority there, 65% say yes, with either webinars, collaboration, or platform tools.
No, that's great. That's good.
That's great. Thank you for that.
That really helps.
And I think just reflecting back on that, I mean, it's interesting, if we'd done this poll 10 years ago, there would be probably fewer organisations that said, yes, they do their activities online. So I think the development of online collaboration platforms, the ease and use of smartphones means that it's second nature. We expect to be able to connect and collaborate online. If we go back to the early days, when people like Chris Collison were setting up their communities back in the oil sectors, they were using things like faxes. That was the most technical that they had. So, you know, definitely
email.
Absolutely, definitely, you know, and this was even before email. So then when email came on board, email was the de facto move to, whereas now everyone has access to much more useful collaborative platforms. And within organizations, most of you will have things like SharePoint systems or Google or Office 365, whatever that may be. So it's getting easier to run communities compared to when this all started off, you know, 20 odd years ago.
Well, that's probably something that we'll talk about. Is it made it easier or not? So
easier or a pain in the ass.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do today, I'm going to take you through 4 bits of research that was part of the KIN network. So the original one was a community of practice and what works. That's back in 2003. The first research project in 2006 around using communities to improve individual and organisation performance. Next one in 2009 around knowledge sharing networks, and based off the liminal roles around facilitation of knowledge sharing communities. So these are the 4 bits that I picked out, different bits of research, and I'm going to take you through some of those. Tell you a little bit about the story about me as well as part of this, and see how it goes from there. Okay, so as Erica mentioned, I've come from being a member to being a facilitator of the network, but around sort of 2005, I became a member of the KIN network. As part of that, I was luckily enough to be partnered up with Erica, as part of the trainer. So we were about to launch a community of practice concept across my organisation. We didn't have a platform at the time, but doing the trainer approach taught me an awful lot about how to run communities, what works, what doesn't work, how to do them online, how to do them offline. It also gave me a great range access to a lot of practitioners, people who were doing this were more advanced than we were, which then I could then ask questions and then find out how they were doing it, learn from their mistakes as well, which is a great thing. And also this research, some of the research was just, without that research, I wouldn't have been able to get where I am now based on that. That's where I wanted to go via this. So the first one is the community practice what works. This was conducted as a big event, and some of the research come out from this was around what was the purpose of the communities. So a lot of the purpose were around things like sharing knowledge, about getting fast answers, looking at learning side, about sharing knowledge and experience over a period of time, making sure that it was integration as part of the process, so especially when you're geographically dispersed. Also trying to reduce the risks as well as part of it. And also some organisations are looking at trying to find the hidden knowledge, the dispersed knowledge that not everyone can access. So there's quite a clear focus around the purpose of communities. And from my experience, a lot of organisations, a lot of communities, when they start, they really struggle to get the right purpose about why they're there.
Yeah.
There's still this big blend between the individual versus the organisation. For the community is about what do the individuals want as part of it, and also what do the organisations want as part of it. And trying to get that balance between both of these can be quite difficult. If it's very much organisational led, will the individual take part? If it's individual led, how does it match up to the organisation? Will I give you any time or effort or purpose behind that? And so that was interesting that still right at the early stages of this research in 2003, they were talking about the purpose and about the balance between individuals and the organisation side of communities. Some examples that come out from this is around improving specific systems, like the feedback elements within it, trying to find ways to change the support options, looking at different markets out there. So instead of just doing the same things I've always done, trying to encourage the involvement of other groups out there, bringing them into the communities. There was still this big thing around the isolation side of it as well. People working in different locations, about how can you get people to tap into each other's knowledge so that they can learn from each other and feel they're part of something bigger. And as well, some of the organisations were looking at the supply chain side of it as well. So there was some really good examples about what was working in different organisations at that period of time.
Yeah. Can I just chip in there, Mike?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just want to kind of add to that one of the things, and you'll see this through our later research as well, was that lots of organisations kind of thought it might be a good idea to set up communities, and someone in an HR department somewhere said, let's create communities, and okay, you work in finance, you're in a finance community, and you work in projects, you're in a project community. But actually what we found was the communities that had a really strong sense of purpose, so picking up on what Mike's just talking about here, that knew what they were there to do, not just somebody told them they were going to be a community, but a community that felt that they had something to add or they had something to gain. Going back to Nancy's definition there of communities, it made a massive difference. And when you make that public and you actually write it down and you share it with people, then they know what they're buying into. So that idea of knowing your purpose, and knowing your purpose for both the individual and for the organisation, because there's kind of two reasons that you exist, was really imperative. And you know, our research showed that communities who did this were much more likely to be successful than communities who didn't.
No, you're right there.
Let's
be the next one. So because a lot of the stuff that Kin have been looking at is around the knowledge sharing aspect of communities. So some of the bits that come out from this was around making sure that people know exactly where to find the information and who knows what, which in a lot of organisations, we still struggle to do that, even with all the new systems out there. Focusing on the problem related stuff. So the things that can be easily solved, not going down the idea where, especially when there's competition between different areas. So that was one of some of the sort of key points for making sure it's like that simple stuff, things that weren't going to be competitive, that allow people to share knowledge as part of it. It's also interesting that at this point in 2003, they were looking at two aspects about the self-emerging communities, the ones that just naturally occur, normally based off the idea of communities of interest, compared to the facilitated ones, maybe around a business element or a business concern, and then having someone to sort of like, model it, try to facilitate it as part of it. And again, self-emerging communities are very much the face-to-face communities as part of it. And you think about this as the scary part that, in 2000, Drupal was only just starting to launch. SharePoint had only launched in 2001, LinkedIn 2002, Moodle 2002, Facebook 2004. So things that a lot of people now probably use as a collaboration space. One were not commonplace. It's still mainly face-to-face collaboration, maybe with something along use of sort of email or some sort of very simple forum-based system compared to what we're used to now. It also threw up a lot of challenges at this point. So when there was competition, communities didn't work. And this is one bit I really still find fascinating, but they were saying that they found it difficult to achieve more than 50% community participation. And if anyone working in communities now, if you can get 50% participation, you're laughing.
You're doing well.
You're doing really, really well. I mean, it's something that's completely different. But again, a lot of these communities are still face-to-face based as well. They also understood the challenge of a community. It takes time. It's not something that can be done overnight. And quite often I hear people go, oh, we expect the community to be able to deliver within 3 months. And that's not something that normally will take place. That's more of a project. Expect to deliver within 3 to 6 months. And also, I've seen organisations try and solve the biggest problem they have, which again, I was talking about this, about the idea that normally the biggest problem is going to be a lot more controversial and could be quite political. So think about simple things, ones that are natural, ones that are starting to occur, rather than trying to target things that are going to be really difficult to do. So that's interesting that some of those challenges were coming out, and these are probably still happening now. And I know organisations I've spoken to in the past that, the participation rates, they don't believe communities can be done. Believe communities can be done instantly, and they pick some of the wrong sort of focuses as well as they're going forward.
And I think picking up on that point you've got there, Mike, about communities take time to be institutionalized. The behaviour in a community is likely to be different to your behaviour in a team or in a project. And so people who think about setting up communities and expect to run them in the same way as they ran a team or a project, kind of command and control, I'm in charge, I have the answers to everything, there's a hierarchy, quickly find that that's not how communities work. Communities are much more level based. It's a no hierarchy, and they've got to be more inclusive. So changing that behaviour for some people is quite difficult.
No, I agree on that one.
Yeah.
Again, this is the final sort of feedback from that bit of research about creating that legacy and legitimacy for the community, for organisational learning and developing capability is one of the key things. Quite often, like when I ask people, how are you going to measure success? How do you know you've achieved anything as part of your community? A lot of people struggle to do that. And again, it's about if you're going to get the right community, clear purpose, understanding what it's there for, what the needs are, the balance between the membership and the organisational purposes behind it are really, really important as part of it. So even in 2003, these are still really, really sort of like key things that I still preach as part of it. That get these right, you're more likely to be successful. If you don't get them right, the technology won't solve it for you anyway. So yes, it's interesting in that these are the basics, and quite often people do start to move out the basics. They try and use the whizzy stuff rather than going back to the basics to make it work. This sort of led on to the next bit of research. This is actually more of a detailed research, which is around a 2006 research project around improving individual and organisational performance. There's my phone, typical. Part of this. So, I didn't shut the door. Okay, give it a second. So as part of this, there were 52 communities surveyed, coming from all different sectors, so oil, engineering, consumer product, aerospace, high tech, including public sector organisations around sort of defence, IT consulting. So a whole range of different organisations, different communities were surveyed as part of this project. The research is huge. There's loads of stuff out there as part of it, but it was summarised down into 9 key aspects of it. And these are the 9 about how do you increase the community of practice impact across your organisation. So still early stages before everything went more online, And I still feel this is really important, that actually providing face-to-face events is really key to any community. I mean, me and Nancy have been doing other stuff, and we also work with an organisation called CMX, and they run regular events, and they're really great because they are face-to-face. The community also, the activities need to address business issues, was one of the key things that come out from that as well. And if you do that, also you need to provide training for the people running those communities, because it's not a natural skill for a lot of people. They don't really see those types of things. So people who are great at networking and being able to collaborate and cajole and encourage people to do that are brilliant at this work. But not everyone is in the right sort of role or right sort of space to be able to do that or have time to do that. One of the things I've noticed as well is that the people running the community is given sufficient time to do this, and we'll go into that in a bit more detail later on. There's also sometimes a high level of expectation on the community. They expect people to be able to do things very, very quickly. Again, it's not a project team, it's all about more volunteer based as well. We talked about the goals, so the purpose part of it as well, and some of the other key bits around making sure that you're helping people solve the day-to-day challenges of the organisation. So there's a whole range of things there, and you could break them each down into lots of different details. But how many organisations running the community of practice approach do actually provide all these elements as part of it to make it work? Probably not all of them, but if you can do as many as you can, you're more likely to get the community to actually succeed as part of the work.
Yeah, and I think it's weird saying, Mike, that when we did this piece of research across member organisations and beyond, the most successful communities had all of these 9 factors in place. There were thousands of communities that had 1 or 2 of them, and they were just much less successful. So that's kind of why the basic idea came out, that all of the most successful ones had these as basic building blocks.
And again, it's all about the building blocks. Get the building blocks right, you're more likely to make it succeed.
Yeah.
Also from this as well, as part of this, there was a bit of a follow-up work. It's actually from Harvard's Business Review. It's called Harnessing Your Staff's Informal Networks. That was conducted by Richard McDermott and Douglas Archibald. And Douglas Archibald was, again, part of the research team as part of this. And a bit I found quite interesting is comparing it to teams. And I know, Erica, you mentioned teams earlier on, and running projects, but successful communities have goals, deliverables, assigned leadership, accountability for results and metrics. And how many communities really do that now? And again, it all goes back to the purpose, the objectives, working towards it, giving people the chance to actually facilitate the community as well, but also be accountable for the results. And again, this accountability comes under something that we're going to talk about in a little while as well. So it's interesting that those sort of bits all come out again. So purpose is one of the key parts of it. The second bit of research was a follow-on for the 2006 research around knowledge sharing networks and organisational performance. And again, similar approach. Again, surveyed 78 different sort of communities around it. Again, both from private sector and public sector. Gave us a nice blend. This is actually the first research project I was part of, so I'd learned from the previous two research projects. And one of the things that was interesting, that the original view for communities had softened over the years. So it had gone from being the grassroots, self-organising form of learning to they can be recognised, they can be sort of managed in some ways. Still need for sponsorship, needs to have that link to the corporate objectives. And I know I've heard lots of stories about the idea when senior managers try and come into a community that it can kill them. And we still sort of see that quite often. But again, it's about that balance between what it is and what it's not. So that was interesting, that the sort of original view has started to adjust over time. This may be influenced by the way the knowledge sharing had started to approach the community, becoming more established as a way of working. But let's see how that happens.
Yeah, and I can remember when the results of this research came out, and the lead on this, Harry Scarborough, who was involved in all of these research projects, was presenting back the findings. And he said one of the things that it looks as though we're moving in communities to a position where they need more support and they need more structure than just a loose amalgam of people. But you can't overmanage them. And I can remember him saying, if you try to overmanage them, you'll kill them. So it's given them that legitimacy, it's given them the support, and given them funding potentially, but without trying to stifle them or without trying to control them. It was a very fine line, and many organisations got it wrong.
And so one of the key bits I picked up from this was around the leadership side, like the community management side, the facilitation side. There's all different words that you can use as part of this. And from this research, they come up with 3 different aspects of it, like the front stage, the integration side, and the backstage. A bit similar to sort of like the iceberg methodology. That there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes, and you only see a small point at the front. And as the community leaders or the community facilitators, community managers, they maybe those roles could blend between the different ones as well. Mm-hmm. And the stuff at the front stage was stuff that most people would see. So there's the success story elements, the metrics element behind it, getting feedback from the members, but also then trying to link it back to any business objectives as well. So stuff that, people will see at the top without all the stuff you don't see behind the scenes. So that's to be the front stage side that most of the people will be seeing as part of it. Also, the leaders or the facilitators were trying to integrate it, making sure that the objectives are always being adapted, and once an objective has been passed, you move on to the next one, making sure that they fit with the organisation as well, making sure that anyone who's supporting them sponsorship wise were making sure that they were happy, it was getting the feedback as part of it. So quite often, most facilitators don't always get that. They don't get the time to work with stakeholders, get the balance between those as well. But these were some of the things coming out that the successful community were getting this good balance between the front stage, the integration stage, and then all the stuff that happens behind the scenes as well. So making sure that, what's the membership all about, managing the membership, identifying new people to come into the community, because once you've got your group of members, that needs to constantly evolve and move and flow. People will leave, people will go on to new roles. You need to recruit new members into it, otherwise the community stagnates. Also, telling people about the community, about what it's doing. Some of the great things they're doing, not telling what the purpose is. It's about making sure that you get that flow of new people coming in, so that it's like the honeybee approach, that people come in, take the knowledge away, pass it on to others. And also some of the stuff again behind the scenes is about the generating discussions, the content side of it, coordinating the meetings, getting people together on a regular basis. And for this as a role, it's a huge role that a lot of people probably weren't aware of now. That community management role, where it's gone from just being something that you just arrange to get the meetings together and hope it all worked, to something that's now more formalised, and understanding what the different types of things you need to do as part of it.
Yeah, and I think, again, coming back to this idea of behaviours, some people feel very comfortable doing all that front stage stuff, being the person who's the face of the community, they're connecting with people, they're opening doors, they're raising awareness, etc. And other people just feel more comfortable doing the kind of backstage stuff, all the sitting down and organising the meetings and the detailed analysis and the kind of coordination stuff. But actually you need to be able to do both that and all the integrating stuff in the middle. So in some organisations this role is shared, and that makes sense because it's not always one person, because that doesn't necessarily fit with one person's kind of preferred behaviours or their strengths in the team. So it can be a shared role, but I think what this actual research highlighted was that it's not either or. In fact, you need to have all 3 in order to lead it successfully.
And it's something I picked up as well, is that the communities I support, we always try and encourage at least 3 people to be facilitators.
Yeah.
Because this is a single role, unless you're doing it full time, and that's the only role you're doing, it's going to be near impossible to do. Even full time, this is going to be a struggle. As Eric and you mentioned, I know some people more stronger in certain aspects of it compared to others.
Yeah.
So that's just interesting that as communities start to evolve, the role of the facilitator has really changed and need to be adapted to fit the needs and the expectations of everyone as part of it as well. So as part of that, is actually a follow-up to this. Again, Harry Scarborough and Jackie Swan at Icon did some research around the liminal roles. This is where you have to have a quote from Wikipedia in every online presentation you do. So this is my quote from Wikipedia about the liminality, about the idea that quite often you're sort of in between different roles, you're not quite there yet as part of it. Or you can use this other term, the betwixt and between. So for most people who are coordinating communities, they are doing it as an add-on to their full-time job. I know from my communities, we did some research around this about some community facilitators are spending 3 to 4 hours a week with their community as an add-on to their normal job as part of it. And that can be quite time consuming. Sometimes it can be a lot more. And also there's these expectations from the community members about what they can do and how they coordinate it and make it all work, but also the senior management expectations as well. But it's not part of your job role. It's an add-on to your job, but you're still expected to deliver without it being formalized in any way. So what Nancy's going to do in a second, she's going to pop up a poll for me, hopefully. Well, it's got some nice little questions, and what we want to do is to answer, if you can, how you feel like you facilitate a community. Do you feel like you're more of a knowledge broker, facilitate the knowledge sharing and make connections? Are you more of an internal consultant for your community, that strategic approach and develop business case for communities? Are you avant-garde? You just want to push the boundaries of the community. Do you provide a service for the community? Don't view them more as a customers. Or are you an orphan child? Are you someone who just gets left behind and just left to get on with it with no support behind you? Be interested to know how you feel you fit into one of those 6 roles. 5 roles, I can't count.
I always feel, people I seem to connect with often feel like the orphan child, that they're the only one in their business doing this, that no one else is really interested, but they know it's adding value.
Yeah, and I can certainly reflect on that. I remember when this research was commissioned initially, and we had an awful lot of people who were orphan child, and what we recommended was that we were starting to create communities of community leaders. So it's you're not out there on your own. There are other people who run a community. Okay, their content may be completely different to yours, but their jobs are still the same. The issues they're facing are still the same. So, there were lots of people who were looking to find other people in the same boat, and connecting those was really valuable.
And that's something I always picked up, that it's that shoulder to cry on sometimes is quite useful. So we're not the only ones that are struggling with
You're
this.
not alone in this. Yeah, very much so.
Right, I'll end the poll then and share the results. So interestingly, from this group, no one's feeling like an orphan child, which is fantastic. That's really surprised me. The majority is a knowledge broker, facilitating knowledge and sharing, and then second is a service provider. Yes, responding to the needs of the community, sort of like customers.
Yeah, that's good.
That's great, thank you.
And I think that result really does kind of show the how communities have moved on, and how people are maybe at quite a high level of maturity running their communities, because being the knowledge broker is the great place to be. But for many people, when communities were first introduced, they didn't know what they were, they didn't have that support. So it's great to see that that's changed over time.
No, that's great, thank you. That's good.
And Mark just added that it's different in different ways. You're sort of a consultant for some things, but for maybe different role for someone in another guise.
No, you're right. I mean,
got multiple hats, haven't we?
Yeah, and again, it depends. I mean, that takes like Arthur Shelley's organisational zoo approach, that you need to adapt and change depending on who you're talking to. So it's that idea. And again, from the research, I don't know, if you're more of a knowledge broker, you're spending probably a lot more of your work in the backstage area. So you're connecting people, making sure you're getting people discussing, getting discussions going, providing events, making sure the membership are happy, bringing new members in. So you're probably more happy in that sort of area. Where so like the internal consultants, or actually we're quite a few service providers which are going between the front and the backstage. So it's quite interesting that we had a good mix of different ones, but this is some of the research that come out about where you probably spend some of your time as part of it. And I mean, I've done that survey before for a group I work with, and again, a lot of them were more towards the knowledge broker side again. We did it a few orphan child people in there where I just got told, off you go and create a community on something without being supported, understanding what it was there for. And so we then tried to support them as trying to find out what their purpose was. Do they actually need this? It's one of the good questions that we normally ask is like, well, if you didn't do it, what difference would it make? And quite often it was like, it wouldn't make any difference at all. So it's interesting that those sort of things are coming up. Going back to sort of the expectation side as well. So I've started to well, this is some of the research come out as well, and I've seen this happen quite a bit, that the expectation for members is getting higher. So not only make sure you pick the right space for that to happen, making sure that it makes people feel they're comfortable to share, which is quite difficult to do, but also trying to help people develop their skills and opportunities for them to improve their career profiles as well. So a lot of people really struggle to explain the benefits of being part of a community, but you've got to try and do that to try and get them motivated to participate as well. And also quite often, I'm starting to see it more from this growing from the ground up. There isn't a natural community that's starting to happen. It's like, oh, we've got this, let's try and get people together and hope it works. So again, as someone managing the community, these expectations on you are getting more difficult to sort of deal with. But again, if understanding what they are when you start can really make a difference to what you're going to do as part of it as you go forward. And again, on the senior management side as well, for some people, you've got to demonstrate measurable return on investment. So you can't just go, okay, we've had 50 posts on here this month. That's not really the benefit. It's not really showing return on investment behind it. So you've got to make sure it links back to the business case about why you're doing it. Convince the senior management that the community is needed going forward, because quite often, especially now with the technology side of it, you're paying for additional technology. You're paying for more time to be able to do this added onto your job as well. And you've got to try and show how that links back up to the organisation as a whole. So there's a whole range of that balance between the expectations at the senior management level and the community members level. And are you the right person for that? And maybe, as Erica mentioned, having more than one person to do that makes a big difference to any community success. Yeah. Some of the other bits that are starting to come up as well, and this is more the emergent practice for the community managers, about that developing the membership, about trying to get that good flow of membership sticking with the community. We know that, so back in the 2003 research, they were talking about 50% participation. We're now looking at somewhere between, sort of like the Wikipedia one is the 1990. The State of Community Management report from about 4 or 5 years ago, we're looking around sort of like 20% people participate, and another sort of 15%, 20% of people actively joining as part of that. So there's still a lot of people that are on the periphery of the community, maybe just readers, maybe just not even getting involved at all. There's also this big thing about facilitating engagement, and I mean, Nancy get this question all the time: how do we create engagement in our community? And that's quite a big skill. And again, it all goes back to what's the purpose, making sure that you're creating engagement based on what the purpose of the objectives are of the community. There's also a lot of stuff around like the content management, producing new content for people to engage with, and some of the research I've done in the past about where you spend your time in your community. And quite often, a lot of people are creating new content, new documentation, new guidance, new reports, and that can be quite time consuming as well. So there's a whole range of different things that are coming up. So I just do it in the purpose, making sure that you're advocating the community, telling people about it, and also trying to find ways you can document the outcomes as well, sharing what difference it's made, what's the return on investment, the stories, the anecdotes about the difference that community is making. That's all quite time consuming. So these are all different things that are coming up. So not one person. It's going to be really difficult to make sure this works as a community. It depends on the purpose, but there's stuff to think about as you go forward. So I'm not trying to scare everybody, but it's more of the idea that being aware of all this stuff when you start, I think you get the right processes put into place at the start, rather than trying to go along and hope it all works and then realize actually how much time and effort and work it takes to get a community up and running.
Yeah, and I think it reflects back on the earlier slide where we talked about this front of house, back of house. Some of these things, some people will be comfortable doing, whether that's about documentation or content management, because it's kind of back of house, and they're comfortable, writing that down, creating explicit knowledge, creating knowledge assets that people can find or read. And other people are more comfortable doing that other end, which is about that developing the membership, facilitate the engagement, more that kind of people relationship side of it, and you really have to do all of it. And so going back to Mike's point about sharing this role might be useful, because there's a lot to be expected of you as the lead of a community.
Yeah, and so that's really the sort of key bits I've gone through. I mean, there's so much research here that I can only cherry pick out some aspects of it. These are the bits that I found fascinating, the bits that I've used to help me when I've been sort of supporting communities as well for the last sort of 15, 16 years. But it really comes back to sort of like three key elements, and it's get the basics right. If you get the basics right, your community will do really well. And quite often the basics are missed. That purpose element behind it, establishing why the community is there, the objectives, making sure you've got the right membership behind it, understanding about what the needs are and demands of the members compared to what the organisation need as well. Getting those all right are really, really fundamental to any community working and being successful. The facilitation role is becoming more and more important. It's not just I can run a community. The skills behind it are becoming more and more complex. Yesterday was Community Management Advancement Day, and yesterday the theme was around self-care, about not only dealing with yourself as you're running communities, about how you manage yourself, but also for some communities there are potential issues with people with mental health issues and dealing with those. These are things that when communities of practice started were never even expected or we thought about at the start. So there's a lot more responsibility in the facilitation of a community now than ever before. And also, again, it's that's managing the expectations, getting that balance between what the members want and what the senior management want or the organisation wants as part of the community. If you can get those balanced well and have clear expectations of what you can do and what you can't do, especially if there's only one or two of you doing that, you can't change the world overnight. We know that. We know communities can take quite a long time to establish and become part of the organisation's way of working. But managing those expectations can be a tough task as well. So again, that all goes back onto the facilitation thing. But again, if you've got the basics right, you maybe are starting to explore those right at the start. So as a whole, they all sort of fit into each other. But those are the three bits that I've found really, really important to any community success. Basics, the clear facilitation of it, and the expectation. If you can do that, you normally, and based on this research, it sort of fits with that mold as well. That these are the things that you need to get working as going forward. And Erica, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think, just what Mike says, to me, the basics are kind of, you can use historical research and you can use, the information we've shared today. Historical stuff will tell you how to get the basics right. Facilitation is very much in the here and now, and you have to do it every single day. You can't just facilitate, once a month or once every couple of months. It's a kind of ongoing. And then that expectations thing is really about that future focus, because you need to give the community the idea that this will continue and will continue to grow and continue to change and continue to adapt. So if I took these kind of three basic building blocks in terms of how we run the KIN network, yes, we've got the basics. We've been going for a long time. We know how to set up groups and we know how to open up discussions and all those basics that Mike talked about. But that ongoing facilitation, we have to keep on top of that all of the time. And we're always looking for the future expectation. I mean, the nature and the content of community has changed over the last 20 years. And we have to work with that and we have to change with them. So there's a strong push in organisations now for innovation. You'll all know this from your own experience. And so we as a network are having to adapt and change in that direction. So, we're eating our own dog food. I think that's what I'm trying to say here. We know this, and picking up on Mike's experience of running K-Hub and community facilitation, you have to keep on top of these things, and we're certainly doing that at KIN.
That's great. So that's pretty much our overview of the whole little presentation. So I know there's been some nice chat. I've sort of seen it pop up every now and then on the other screen. So really, is there any questions or any feedback about what we're talking about? Does it make sense? Is this obvious? I hope it is. Or is it something that you may be missing some of these aspects as part of your community approach?
There has been lots of great comments and discussion continually through today's session. Mike's just asked a question saying, how do you encourage contact or conversation between communities? So we were talking earlier in the chat that sometimes the community managers are so focused on their own communities they don't lift their head up and sort of talk to other community managers. So I don't know if you've got any advice, either of you, on how best to do that.
No, I mean, saying that I miss actually being my complete home worker, that the organisation I previously worked for, we used to run regular face-to-face meetings, and we used to run a big annual conference every year, and that was amazing, being able to get people from all different organisations coming together to share what they had, and it just opened it up a lot more, and that a lot of the face-to-face element is missing, and something that I want to go more into, but looking at super user stuff. So I'm going to be talking to you, Nancy, about super user communities in the future, by giving people a bit of time to talk to other facilitators, other people doing the same work in different areas, where having like the COP leaders community gives people the basics, but this is more about the ones that really want to go to the next level. Maybe separating those people out, the ones that want to do something more compared to the ones that are doing the basics. And a lot of the communities that I work with, a lot of them aren't communities of practice. They're not really knowledge sharing communities. Some of them are more like projects. They're knowledge, they're like news groups. They're a whole range of things, but they use the community approach. And then so when you start speaking to them, actually you're not doing a community, you're doing this is what you need to do instead. So you don't need to focus on all these other bits, but the ones who are looking at more a community approach, I think we need to try and sort of separate those out, because it's a lot more detailed than just having a space to upload all your documents on.
And I can kind of endorse that kind of view. When we did the original research on communities of practice, we found that they're not all communities of practice. Some are communities of interest, some are networks, some are formal groups, some are working committees, some are project teams. Whatever it's called, I think the basic premise here is that if you treat it as if it is a community, you can achieve great things. And if you work with other people who are working in the same way, you can learn from each other. So this idea of these orphaned children that we had, and bring them together to share with each other because they're all community leaders, I think is a great approach. And it's certainly something we want to do more of at Kin. And we're looking at, should we be setting up kind of regional groups, or, can we work, as Mike says, with super users, so that we're bringing together people who are trialing new things, and really pushing those boundaries and creating new expectations, because I think that's where the growth of communities is going to lie. So, we can certainly help to do some of that, helping connect people where they are currently only working in one sphere, to make that a more diverse collection of people.
And using the tools like turning your cameras on for calls, if you have got to be remote, or having the chat running at the same time, so it's not, I hope it's not too much of a distraction, but actually you're discussing what you're listening to at that point, so it becomes more value add. There's a couple of questions, there's loads of questions actually coming in. I'm just going to try and capture them. There's some love for the liminal roles idea. I think everyone, it sort of reminded them of things that perhaps they've overlooked. Liz shared an example that she had an overlap between members recently, and that was excellent. That really helped the sort of members see the difference from two different communities. I think it's Mike, is it? I'm not sure of this one. Can't see the full name, but given that we're asking people to volunteer their time and their knowledge through communities of practice, how do we convince the participants' line managers that it's a good use of time? How do we make them see what's the value to support them giving up their time?
This goes back to Erica's original training, part of some of the stuff I've done as well. Benefits section. So what's the benefits to the members? What's the benefits to the members' manager? What's the benefits to the members' manager's manager? And also what's the benefits to the full thing outside, like the people you're working with outside that will be impacted by this as well. And quite often no one's thinking about those, about, if you can say that the reason I participate in this community is to do this, and it then piques the interest of the manager, they give you time to do that. If you can look at elements like, or by doing this, it's going to save us doing all this stuff. And the selling of the community is quite often missed. So they sell it to the members, but they don't sell it to the members' manager. So we
totally agree with what Mike's saying there. In fact, within Kin, we set up a special interest group which was looking at management buy-in. So exactly that. So it's okay. It's easy to get the members on board because they know what they're getting out of it. You may well be able to tell the sponsor what the organisation gets out of it, but how do you get that middle bit, that difficult middle, which is convincing the managers to allow the participants time to get involved in the community? And that's a skill all of its own. And there are ways and methods, but it's one that people maybe don't pay enough attention to. And you know, we've done a lot of work in that area. To how do you convince them, and a lot of it is working to their ego, and a lot of it is showing them what's the benefit for them actually. How will this person
connect it to their pain point, isn't it?
Reflect on them, absolutely.
Yeah. And I mean, one of the stories I had, there's a lady, one of the chief execs years ago working. She goes, I'm not a member of any of the communities, but I asked my team to be members. And they come back with great ideas, and we've implemented 9 or 10 of those since then, which we've never done before,
right?
Without that experience. So she was quite happy. She was lucky that she was going, no, I trust my staff to do this. But quite often, some managers don't trust their staff to be able to do that. So how can you turn them around? And that's the difficult one. That you've got some people that understand this way of working, others that don't do it at all. So it's trying to find those benefits, picking those little ego points that you maybe can do. But again, that's any project.
Understanding what their motivation or barriers are. If it's kudos or if it's faster projects, whatever the whatever the driving force.
I've got some stuff on that. I'll try and dig it out and share that at some point.
And Natalie said that she got blocked from using Zoom from her company. So apologies there. We probably need to, I don't know what the most common tool is at the moment, but we find that. And it's great because we can record and have this chat all at the same time. I don't know if there's any suggestions for other platforms by any of the group, but that's my preference of tools. Serena says, how do you encourage people who are time poor and perhaps really struggle to participate outside of their day jobs? I don't know if either of you, I mean, a lot of these stuff happens outside of the working day, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And I think it comes back to the comment that Michael made on the last question, which was you sell them the benefits. You know, you have to say your investment of time in this community will in the long run save you time, save you effort, improve your learning, make you do your job better, faster, whatever. So it is about being able to say, yeah, we know it's time and we know everyone's time poor, but actually it's investing in this community will in the longer term, be of greater value. So it's a return on your investment.
It's the what's in it for me as well.
Absolutely.
Quite often, a lot of communities, something I always do when I get a chance to work with a community, I ask them to do a wants and offers exercise with 10, 15 potential members. Once you've got that, you've got a whole range of wants, whole range of offers. You can match those up. So what's in it for me? Why am I participating in this? Because you're going to get access to materials you can't get anywhere else. And here's a copy of something. So imagine if someone says, I've got to write a presentation on this, and someone shares it with you. That's probably a day's worth of work saved. That's fine. It's equivalent to £500 possibly of time saved. So it's those
and something
stories.
like that it's a really simple exercise. I certainly remember doing one with you years back, Mike, where somebody said they had to do an FAQ for a certain thing that was being introduced, and someone went, I've already done it, and it was like, okay, you just saved me 5 days of work.
Just crowdsourcing it, isn't it? Just asking.
Yeah, that was months. It was a SharePoint FAQ. They're about to implement SharePoint, and they booked in something like 30 days to build an FAQs. With a team of 5 of them writing it from scratch.
And we do that with customers. We get them to write them.
And someone says, I've already done one, here it is. So there's a benefit of community straight away, saving time.
My example, a really simple one, was a guy called Adrian I used to work with. When the white paper came out from government, we always got it a day before, 2 days before. And Adrian was a policy officer. He'd write the summary of the policy document and send it round to the whole community. So 362 local authority policy officers didn't have to read the document and write it from scratch.
Brilliant.
Something like that.
I've just launched the poll because I know we're near the end of the hour, and I'd love to get your feedback on how you found today's webinar. obviously do email us as well, any feedback or ideas to improve this experience. I'm just going to dip in because one question was asking about a couple of engagement strategies that you've seen worked, and I'm particularly fond of the something to learn, something to share concept, and you can do that either in conversation or online. People are very comfortable at sharing something that's gone well. So if you can tee up a couple of people to share something that they're really proud of, maybe really succinctly, but also ask something that they need help on. So if you marry the two together in either a forum or a conversation or face-to-face, then you seem to get to the rich part of where people really need help. If you get a few people role modeling that, then others will follow suit in the sort of social proof theory. So something to learn, something to share is definitely a tool in my toolkit that I use regularly, both online and in person.
Yeah, I mean, I'll add to that one. I mean, I use a thing, well, two techniques in making forums. Hot seat approach. So imagine you've got a really great presenter at an event and you only get one or two people get a chance to ask them questions. We then bring them in to the community to be able to answer questions. I can do a little presentation as part of it, and then the whole community can actually get a chance to answer the questions. It's all documented as well, which is even better. Or the other one we've done is an online chat where we pose sort of 3 to 5 questions over an hour period and ask the community to come up with ideas. We've done stuff around the fun one we did a little while ago. How do we make a community fail? And some of the answers were brilliant on that. And so, well, okay, you have to make it fail, so don't do any of those.
Don't do any of those. Yeah.
So it was interesting. Just those little discussion topics can be really good engagement.
Okay, so is that the poll closed now, Nancy?
Yeah, and I've just shared it. So one person's not sure, but the majority have either found it helpful or incredibly helpful.
Right. Okay.
Which is
thanks
fantastic.
for your questions as well.
Yeah, fantastic discussion on the chat today. I really appreciate that. I'm going to send, you're going to send a note to everyone that attended. Oh yes, here you go. Share what's coming next.
Yeah, so this is just a little pre-taster for some things which are coming up in Kin over the next couple of months. You see a wide variety of subject matter. We've got an event in Coventry on the 13th of February looking at embracing experiential learning. So it's all about, you know, how you learn through doing. We've got our big summit at the Shard in March 26th in London, where we've got some great speakers, including somebody from NASA and some of our top academics from Warwick, sharing some of their top-end research. And another one, a different flavour, artificial intelligence and design thinking at the British Council in Manchester. One of our former Kin members sharing with us what's going on in the world of artificial intelligence. And again, I know that's something which is huge for most organisations now. So if you're interested in any of those events, you know, get in touch. We can certainly give you more information about them.
Yeah, just the last one, there's some links here, so if you need to get in touch with us, that's our email address is. Also you can go straight to Kin and Louise, who's our support person as well, and also there's a link to the website as well, so it gives you a bit more detail about it. So what we'll do is at the end list, we'll gather all stuff together, we'll send out the slides, a link to the presentation so you can watch it back, and also if some people couldn't make it today, they'll be able to get that, maybe some time zone issues around that. But I'd like to say thank you for listening in. Some great questions. We'll take all those ones and we'll look at them and see how we can respond back to some of those as well. Some ideas of things we can do in the future. And I want to thank Erica for helping me out on this, and Nancy being the host as well.
Yeah, great. It's been fun to share this, and thanks for collating this summary of what is a huge body
20 years worth of research.
Yeah.
Yeah, academic stuff's not the easiest thing to read sometimes.
Tell me.
Okay, so yeah, thank you very much everyone for coming along. It's been a pleasure, and I really enjoyed actually talking about this today. So thank you very much, and we'll see you all soon, hopefully.
Great. Thank you, everyone. And just to confirm, we're definitely sharing the slides and the recording to everyone who's registered. I know that's come up a couple of times, but we will make sure you get those. Yeah, and if anybody wants to know anything more about Kin membership, please contact me. I'm happy to talk with you about what we do within the network. Great, thank you for joining us today, and hopefully see you next time.
Great, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.